The black bear wasn't supposed to be there. Curled into the reclined passenger seat of Sarah Cooper's silver Subaru, massive paws tucked under its chin, breath fogging the windows from the inside. Discovery at dawn by a jogger who thought his eyes were playing tricks. A community gathered, cameras flashing. Wildlife authorities arrived with tranquilizers ready. But when they finally opened the car, empty, no bear, no damage, no explanation. Then came the impossible. Claw marks materialized on the ceiling, vanishing when photographed. Forest scents permeated the sealed vehicle. The car's electronics developed a pulse, like a hibernating heartbeat. Honey appeared in unexpected places. Dreams invaded the minds of anyone who sat inside. Vivid wilderness visions that lingered for days. The car moved locations overnight despite locked keys. Sarah began detecting scents from miles away, craving foods she'd never wanted before. Wildlife experts dismissed it. Paranormal investigators were baffled. As Pine Ridge residents witnessed Sarah's transformation accelerate, ancient local legends resurfaced about the thin veil between human and animal consciousness. The bear had chosen her car for a reason, and as winter approached, the line between Sarah Cooper and the creature that had visited her vehicle blurred beyond recognition. The sleeping bear was just the beginning. Pine Ridge nestled against the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains like a town forgotten by time. With just under 2,000 residents, it was the kind of place where people still left their doors unlocked and knew the names of their mail carriers. Thick forests surrounded the community on three sides, creating a natural boundary between civilization and wilderness. Mark Thompson had lived in Pine Ridge his entire life. At 62, he maintained the same morning routine he had followed for the past 30 years. Every day at 5:30, regardless of season or weather, Mark laced up his running shoes and set out for his 4-mile jog along Cherry Blossom Drive. On this particular Tuesday, in early October, the air carried the first real chill of autumn. Mark had just rounded the corner onto Lakeside Avenue when something unusual caught his attention. Sarah Cooper's silver Subaru Outback was parked in its usual spot in her driveway, but something about it seemed off. The windows were completely fogged from the inside. As he slowed his pace, he noticed the fog pulsed slightly, as if something inside was breathing. Approaching cautiously, Mark circled the vehicle. When he reached the passenger side, he froze. Through a small clear patch in the condensation, he could make out something large and dark inside. A black bear, fully grown and weighing at least 300 pounds, was curled up on the reclined passenger seat, sleeping as peacefully as a child. Mark backed away slowly and called 911. "There's a bear in Sarah Cooper's car." Mark's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. A black bear, sleeping, in Sarah Cooper's car, on Lakeside Avenue. By the time Mark had alerted a disbelieving Sarah to the situation, neighbors had begun to emerge from their homes, drawn by the arrival of police cruisers with flashing lights. Within 30 minutes, nearly 24 Pine Ridge residents had gathered at a safe distance. Sarah stood on her front porch, clutching her bathrobe closed at her throat, her expression oscillating between disbelief and nervous laughter as she fielded questions from Officer Jennings. How could a bear get into a locked car? Had she left food inside? Had she heard anything during the night? None of it made sense. The car had been locked. The windows were intact. There was no obvious point of entry, and yet, undeniably, a massive black bear was currently using Sarah Cooper's passenger seat as a bed. Wildlife officer Rena Martinez arrived 45 minutes after Mark's initial call, her truck pulling up alongside the 3 police cruisers already on scene. As the region's primary wildlife management specialist, Rena had handled dozens of bear encounters over her 15-year career. Bears raiding garbage cans, bears trapped in backyard sheds, bears wandering through elementary school playgrounds. But in all her years of service, she had never encountered a bear that had somehow managed to break into a car without leaving a trace of forced entry. Officer Jennings briefed her as they approached the vehicle together. "Car belongs to Sarah Cooper." He gestured toward the woman still standing on her front porch, now surrounded by neighbors offering coffee and theories in equal measure. "Says she parked it around 8 last night. Swears she locked it. No food inside according to her. No damage that we can see." Rena circled the Subaru slowly, studying it from every angle. The windows remained fogged, though small clear patches had begun to form as the morning air warmed. Through these patches, the bear was clearly visible, still sleeping soundly. Its black fur rose and fell with each breath, occasional twitches suggesting it was dreaming. "How did it get in?" Rena murmured, more to herself than to Officer Jennings. She checked each door handle, all locked. She examined the windows, the sunroof, even got down on her hands and knees to look underneath the vehicle. Nothing appeared damaged or forced. It was as if the bear had materialized inside the locked car. The crowd of onlookers had grown to nearly 50 people. Smartphones recorded every move Rena made, while hushed conversations buzzed with speculation. Several news vans had arrived, their reporters setting up cameras and microphones at the edge of the police perimeter. Sarah Cooper had finally ventured from her porch, approaching Rena with visible trepidation. Her eyes never left her car as she spoke. "What happens now? How do you get it out?" "We need to sedate it first," Rena explained, preparing her tranquilizer rifle. "Once it's unconscious, we can safely remove it and relocate it to a more appropriate habitat." "And my car?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with worry. "Bears can be destructive when confined. There will likely be damage to the interior. Claw marks, torn upholstery, that sort of thing." Rena tried to sound reassuring, but Sarah's face paled nonetheless. What followed was a carefully orchestrated operation. The crowd was moved further back. Rena positioned herself with a clear shot through the least fogged window. Two officers stood ready with the car keys Sarah had provided, prepared to quickly open the door once the bear was sedated. The first unusual occurrence happened when Rena fired the tranquilizer dart. It penetrated the small clear spot on the window and should have embedded in the bear's hindquarters. Instead, the dart seemed to pass through the animal entirely, lodging in the car seat beneath it. "That's not possible," Rena whispered, checking her rifle as if it might explain the impossibility she had just witnessed. She tried again with the same result. The dart passed through the bear as if it were made of mist. Growing increasingly uneasy, Rena made the decision to proceed with opening the vehicle. If the tranquilizer darts weren't affecting the bear, they would need to create an escape route and clear the area. Officer Jennings pressed the unlock button on Sarah's key fob. The car responded with its familiar chirp. Carefully, ready to retreat at the first sign of movement, another officer reached for the passenger door handle and pulled it open. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible even from a distance. The car was empty. No bear. No tranquilizer, darts. Nothing out of place at all. Sarah pushed forward, disbelief evident on her face. "Where did it go? We all saw it. It was right there." Rena stood frozen, her tranquilizer rifle hanging limply at her side. She had been watching the bear through the window continuously. The animal had been there one moment and simply gone the next when the door opened. The interior of the car looked pristine. The seat wasn't even reclined as it had appeared to be when the bear was lying on it. There was no fur, no scratches, no sign that any living creature had been inside the vehicle at all. The only unusual thing was the temperature. When Rena reached in to check the seats, the interior was ice cold, as if the car had been refrigerated. This despite the October morning sun that had been shining on it for hours. "I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "Everyone saw it. You all saw it too, right?" The crowd murmured in agreement. Dozens of phones held video evidence of the bear that had been there just moments before. A bear that had now vanished without explanation. What no one realized in that moment of collective confusion was that this inexplicable disappearance was just the first in a series of increasingly impossible events that would center around Sarah Cooper's ordinary silver Subaru. The crowd dispersed reluctantly. The police filed their reports, though Officer Jennings struggled with exactly how to categorize the incident. Sarah Cooper spent the remainder of the day in a state of nervous confusion. She had her car thoroughly examined by a local mechanic who found nothing out of the ordinary, apart from commenting that the vehicle's interior was unusually cold. She parked her Subaru in the garage that night, checking twice to ensure all doors were locked. For added security, she placed a folding chair in front of the garage door. Sleep came fitfully. Sarah woke shortly after 3 in the morning, heart pounding, certain she had heard something. Just as she had begun to relax, she heard it again, a low, rumbling growl coming from the direction of her garage. For several minutes, she remained frozen in bed, too frightened to investigate, but too unsettled to ignore the sound. Finally, wrapping her bathrobe tightly around herself, she crept downstairs. The growl came again, louder this time, unmistakably the sound of a bear. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for the door connecting her kitchen to the garage. The Subaru sat exactly where she had left it. The folding chair remained undisturbed in front of the garage door. Nothing appeared out of place, and yet the growling continued, clearly emanating from inside the vehicle. She unlocked it with her key fob and cautiously opened the driver's door. The interior was freezing cold, her breath immediately visible in the chill air. But what made her gasp was not the temperature. The passenger seat was covered in deep claw marks. The upholstery was shredded, stuffing protruding from 4 parallel gashes that could only have been made by a large animal. The dashboard bore similar marks, deep gouges in the plastic that hadn't been there hours earlier. Sarah slammed the door shut and backed away, fumbling for her phone. Her fingers shook as she dialed Mark Thompson, the only person she could think to call. Mark arrived 15 minutes later. Together, they examined the car. "This is what I was afraid of," Mark said, running his fingers over the deep claw marks in the seat. "The bear must have damaged it before it somehow escaped." "No," Sarah shook her head emphatically. "These marks weren't here earlier. I drove the car all afternoon. The seats were fine. This just happened. And I heard it, Mark. I heard growling coming from inside the car. But there's nothing in here." Mark looked at her skeptically, but his expression changed when he placed his hand on the passenger seat. "It's freezing," he said. "The whole car is freezing." As they stood there trying to make sense of what they were seeing, something happened that removed any doubt about the strangeness of the situation. Before their eyes, one of the claw marks on the dashboard began to lengthen, the plastic splitting with an audible crack as if being sliced by an invisible claw. Both Sarah and Mark stumbled backward out of the car. They watched in horrified fascination as the mark extended another inch and then stopped. What they had just witnessed defied rational explanation, and neither of them was prepared for what they would discover the next morning, when light revealed that every mark, every scratch, every bit of damage they had seen in the car had vanished completely. A week passed since the initial incident. Sarah had reluctantly returned to using her car for daily activities, though she never felt entirely comfortable behind the wheel anymore. The first new oddity she noticed was the smell. It began subtly, just a hint of pine and wet earth that Sarah initially attributed to having driven past the logging operation. But the scent grew stronger with each passing day. Soon the interior of her Subaru smelled overwhelmingly of deep forest, as if she had parked in the middle of a pine grove after a heavy rain. Sarah tried everything: professional detailing, industrial-strength air fresheners, leaving the windows open for an entire day. Nothing worked. Within hours of any cleaning attempt, the forest smell would return, sometimes accompanied by an unmistakable musky odor that the local mechanic identified immediately. "Bear," he said simply, wrinkling his nose. "Your car smells like bear." The smell was strange but manageable. What happened next was not. Sarah offered to drive her coworker Jenny home when her car wouldn't start. That night, Jenny called Sarah in a state of agitation. "I had the most vivid dream," she said, her voice tense. "I was a bear. Not watching a bear, not near a bear. I was the bear. I could feel my paws on the ground, feel my claws digging into tree bark. It was so real, Sarah, so real that when I woke up, I was confused to find myself in a human body." By the end of the week, 5 different people who had ridden in Sarah's Subaru reported similar dreams. Each described the same sensations, the same hyper-realistic experience of inhabiting a bear's body and consciousness. Sarah herself began having the dreams nightly. In her dreams, she roamed expansive wilderness, feeling a power and freedom her human body had never known. She began to anticipate these dreams, even look forward to them, despite the unsettling feeling they left upon waking. Then the electronics in the car began to malfunction. At first, it was just the radio switching stations unpredictably. Then the windshield wipers activated without warning on clear days. The door locks engaged and disengaged in rhythmic patterns. Sarah started recording these malfunctions on her phone, and when viewed together, a pattern emerged. The timing of the electronic activations matched the gait of a bear walking. The radio frequencies changed in patterns that, when graphed, resembled claw marks. The temperature inside the vehicle fluctuated in regular intervals, similar to the breathing pattern of a hibernating bear. The final incident that convinced Sarah something truly inexplicable was happening occurred while the car was parked in the grocery store lot. She returned with her shopping to find all the electronics going haywire. As she approached, she saw what appeared to be condensation forming on the inside of the windows. Through the fog glass, just for an instant, she saw the outline of a massive bear sitting in the driver's seat. When she unlocked the door, the apparition vanished, leaving only the lingering scent of forest and the bone-deep cold. As October progressed, the phenomena surrounding Sarah's Subaru intensified in ways that could no longer be attributed to electrical malfunctions or overactive imaginations. The car had become a focal point of supernatural activity that defied rational explanation. One morning, Sarah approached her car to find that everything inside had been rearranged overnight. Her umbrella, travel mug, sunglasses, parking permits, and the small collection of items that typically scattered across her dashboard and center console had been carefully positioned to form the unmistakable silhouette of a bear. The items created a perfect outline, as if someone had traced a bear template and placed each object with deliberate precision along the edges. Sarah took photographs, disturbed the arrangement to return items to their usual places, and locked the car. The next morning, despite the vehicle remaining locked all night, the items had once again rearranged themselves into a different bear shape, this time appearing to stand on its hind legs. She showed the photos to Mark, who suggested setting up a camera to record the interior of the car overnight. They positioned Mark's hunting trail camera on the garage shelf with a clear view through the windshield, set it to motion activation, and waited. The results were unsettling. The footage showed the objects moving on their own, sliding across surfaces without any visible force acting upon them. Most disturbing was the moment when her travel mug rotated to form the bear's head. The camera caught a momentary glimpse of what appeared to be the ghostly outline of a paw guiding the mug into position before the translucent appendage vanished. The temperature anomaly that had been present since the beginning continued to defy the laws of physics. As autumn progressed, her car maintained a constant interior temperature approximately 30 degrees colder than the outside air, regardless of weather conditions. During an unseasonable warm spell in late October, Sarah had to wear a winter coat inside her ice-cold vehicle. The car's heating system ran continuously but made no impact on the frigid interior. Perhaps the most inexplicable development began one Tuesday morning when Sarah opened her glove compartment to retrieve her insurance card. Instead of the vehicle documentation she expected to find, the compartment contained a small puddle of golden honey. The sticky substance had the distinct aroma of wildflowers, more intense and natural than any store-bought variety. Sarah cleaned out the honey, replaced her documents, and thought little more about it until the next day, when she opened the glove compartment to find it filled with honey once again. This pattern repeated itself daily. No matter how thoroughly she cleaned the compartment, by morning it would contain fresh honey. Out of curiosity, Sarah collected some of the honey in a jar and took it to a local beekeeper for examination. "This isn't ordinary honey," he explained, holding the jar up to the light. "It contains pollen from alpine flowers that don't grow in this region, some that only bloom at high elevations in early spring. And there are trace elements in here I haven't seen before." "Where did you say you got this?" Sarah couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. News of the supernatural occurrences surrounding Sarah's Subaru eventually reached beyond the boundaries of Pine Ridge. By early November, the strange car had attracted attention from wildlife biologists, paranormal researchers, and even a television crew from a popular ghost hunting show. Dr. Elaine Woodward, a wildlife biologist specializing in black bear behavior from the State University, arrived first. She approached the situation with scientific skepticism, setting up monitoring equipment around the vehicle and collecting samples of the mysterious honey. "In 20 years of studying bears, I have never encountered anything like this," Dr. Woodward admitted on her final day. "The honey contains genetic material from a bear, specifically saliva enzymes, but they don't match any known subspecies in this region." Before leaving, she shared something unexpected with Sarah. "You should look into the history of this land," she suggested quietly. "Native traditions in this region spoke of spirit bears that could move between worlds. I'm a scientist, so I shouldn't even mention this, but my grandmother was Abenaki. She would say your car has been chosen as a spirit gateway." Following Dr. Woodward's visit, a team of paranormal investigators descended on Sarah's home. Their investigation yielded compelling evidence that something truly supernatural was happening. Their equipment malfunctioned near the car. Audio recordings captured low growls and what they described as speech too low for human ears. Thermal imaging showed a large, bear-shaped heat signature inside the vehicle when it was visibly empty. The lead investigator, Maxwell Reed, became particularly interested in the land's history after Dr. Woodward's suggestions. He spent days in the local historical society archives and emerged with information that sent chills down Sarah's spine. This entire area was once sacred ground to the indigenous peoples, Maxwell explained, spreading old maps across Sarah's kitchen table. Your house sits exactly where ancient records describe a spirit cave, a place where tribal shamans would commune with animal spirits, particularly bears, which were revered as wisdom keepers and gateway guardians between the physical and spiritual realms. According to Maxwell's research, when European settlers had cleared the land for development nearly 2 centuries ago, they had destroyed several sacred sites, including the Spirit Cave. Local legends told of a curse placed on the land, warning that the gateway between worlds had been damaged but not destroyed, and that someday the bear spirits would find a new way to cross over. Your car, Maxwell theorized, for whatever reason, has become that new gateway. While Sarah struggled to process this information, wildlife started appearing near her Subaru, gathering in ways that defied natural behavior patterns. Deer approached without fear. Birds perched on the roof in perfect circular formations. A family of raccoons was found sleeping underneath it. Most alarming was the morning Sarah discovered bear prints in the mud surrounding the entire vehicle. Yet security cameras showed no actual bears approaching the property. By mid-November, Sarah could no longer deny that the supernatural events were affecting her physically. The changes began subtly, with an enhanced sense of smell that she initially attributed to the crisp autumn air. But soon she found herself detecting odors imperceptible to others, identifying people by their scent before seeing them, even smelling approaching rainstorms hours before clouds appeared. Her hearing sharpened dramatically. The rustling of leaves, conversations from across the street, the heartbeats of small animals all became audible to her. Her eyesight changed too, colors shifting in her perception. Reds became less distinct, while blues and greens intensified, a change that wildlife experts later told her matched a bear's visual spectrum. Most alarming were the physical urges that overtook her without warning, an intense craving for berries and fish, the compulsion to claw at trees when walking in the forest, a growing preference for darkness and enclosed spaces. Sarah found herself unconsciously swaying side to side when standing still, mimicking a bear's characteristic movement. The car itself began appearing in places Sarah hadn't driven it. She would park it in her garage at night only to find it in her driveway by morning. Engine cold, doors locked. Twice she discovered it parked near the edge of the forest miles from her home, though she had no memory of driving there. Town residents reported seeing the silver Subaru driving along back roads at odd hours, though the vehicle appeared empty behind the wheel. Trail cameras in the national forest captured images of the car near known bear habitats, far from any accessible roads. The final and most disturbing development affected anyone who spent more than 15 minutes inside the vehicle. They would fall into a trance-like state, their breathing slowing, body temperature dropping, consciousness retreating into a hibernation-like condition. As the first snow fell over Pine Ridge, Sarah's transformation reached its culmination. After experiencing her longest fugue state yet, lasting 3 full days, she returned to consciousness with a profound understanding of what had been happening. The knowledge had not come through research or explanation, but through direct communion with the spirit that had chosen her car, and by extension, her. Sarah called a town meeting at the Pine Ridge Community Center. Despite the skepticism many still held, the room was packed with residents curious about the vehicle that had become local legend. The land we live on has always been a threshold, Sarah began, her voice steadier than it had been in weeks. Long before Pine Ridge existed, this valley served as a sacred connection point between the physical world and the spirit realm. The indigenous people who lived here understood this and respected the boundaries. When settlers destroyed the spirit cave, they damaged the connection, but couldn't sever it completely. Sarah explained how the bear spirit, a guardian of this ancient threshold, had been seeking a new gateway for generations. For reasons no one fully understood, her Subaru had become that gateway, a modern vessel for an ancient entity. The spirit isn't haunting my car, Sarah said. It's using it to repair something broken long ago, to restore balance between our world and theirs. Over the following months, Pine Ridge adapted to living with the knowledge that their town straddled a spiritual boundary. Sarah's car became something of a local shrine. Local indigenous elders helped establish protocols for respecting the spirit gateway. Sarah herself completed her transformation, not into a bear physically, but into something between human and spirit. Her senses remained heightened, her connection to the natural world profound. She became a reluctant spiritual leader, a bridge between the community and the ancient presence that had chosen her. The Subaru underwent its own transformation. Sometimes, in the right light, passengers could glimpse a large dark figure in the back seat, watching over them with intelligent eyes. And sometimes, on cold winter nights when the moon shines full over fresh snow, residents report seeing a silver Subaru driving slowly along forest roads, a massive black bear behind the wheel, maintaining the delicate balance between worlds that humans had once broken. If this extraordinary tale of supernatural encounters and spiritual transformation captivated your imagination, there's much more where that came from. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly stories that blur the lines between our world and the unexplained. Click the subscribe button below, turn on notifications, and never miss another journey into the beyond.